And following Xi's visit closely is Anton Fedyashin. He's a professor of Russian history at American University.
Well, it looks like the central issue during the meeting here in Moscow will be economic cooperation, because that's really the most important concern for both sides. The Russians need the Chinese. It's a huge economy. They're compensating for the sanctions that have been imposed from the West. But also, of course, there are security issues that will be discussed. I imagine those will receive a little bit less publicity.
The One Belt, One Road initiative, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, big beneficiaries of this. Does Russia benefit from it at all?
Absolutely. Putin has set a strategic goal for himself to integrate the Eurasian Economic Union with the One Belt, One Road structure. And so far, the interaction between Beijing and Moscow is really a poster example of a win-win situation, and two sides very respectfully proceeding through very difficult negotiations, as economic negotiations always are. But they seem to be on the path to success. This is going to take time, but it really stands as a contrast to Russian relations with the EU, which really began to break down on the issue of economic bloc status for Ukraine in 2014, and then the security issues that swirled around.
Oil and gas have been half of Russia's economy for so long, about a third of the government revenue. You mentioned Ukraine. China has always been there for Russia, especially when the U.S. imposed those sanctions over the Ukraine debacle. Is there any way China can help Russia redefine itself, reinvent itself?
Well, it's already happening in a sense. The Russians had announced their own pivot to Asia in the early 2010s when Vladimir Putin came back to the Kremlin for his third tenure as president. That took a while to actually get off the ground until the Ukrainian crisis happened and created a rift in Russian EU and Russia-Western relations. And that's what really gave the impetus to the Russian pivot towards Asia, and specifically it's warming up to China, which since then, for 3 years now, has proceeded afoot with spectacular success.
Putin is expected to award Xi Jinping with a very high honor, one of Russia's highest honors. Tell us about their relationship.
Well, so far, the two men have been able to find a common language that is warm and respectful, and seem to have developed a chemistry that one wishes that Western leaders were able to find with President Putin, and with the Chinese, for that matter. There seems to be a shared geopolitical and strategic interest in being the leading players in the fate of Eurasia, the broad continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And the strategic partnership seems to focus on cooperation and a mutually respectful attitude.